What is up guys, David Zhou here, and today we're going to be looking at the Sigma 56mm f1.4 that came out in 2018. What I'm interested in finding out today is how this sub $500 lens performs as a portrait lens for the Sony APS-C camera system. Specifically, we'll be testing it on the Sony A6500. On top of that, we're going to compare it against the Sony 85mm f1.4 G Master lens, the king of portraits, on the Sony A7 III, and see how it stacks up. You're interested in the Sigma 56? I'm interested in finding out whether it's worth it. Let's start with the build quality of the lens. The first thing you'll notice is that this thing is insanely compact. It weighs just over half a pound, fits in your hand, and paired with the Sony A6000 series camera like the 6300, 6500, or the brand new 6400, it ends up being a really small package that is capable of delivering impressive results. This lens has a very sleek design and feels sturdy while being lightweight. It's built out of a combination of metal and durable plastic. It has a beveled rubber focus ring that has a decent amount of resistance that makes focusing more pleasant and enjoyable. However, to its detriment, the sleek design also means that it lacks a autofocus manual focus switch, which to some of you, like to myself, might be a little annoying if you're used to having one. This lens is also noted to be weather resistant, which is always a plus because you never know when you'll get stuck in the rain in the middle of a shoot.
There's a battery right there that's probably covered.
Now, if you couldn't tell by the title already, this lens has a 56mm focal length, which in full frame equivalence, adjusting with a 1.5 times crop factor, comes out to be 84mm, and for the sake of convenience, we'll round that to the ubiquitous portrait focal length of 85mm. That, combined with the fast, wide-open aperture of f1.4, this tiny little lens turns out to actually be a portrait monster, which is why I'm comparing this setup of the A6500 and the Sigma 56mm to my actual portrait setup I use for client shoots, the A7 III and the infamously sharp Sony 85mm f1.4 G Master. And when I say infamously, I mean this lens is ranked as one of the sharpest lenses for the Sony camera system by DxOMark. That's a high honor. So to test this lens, I decided to use it for a few projects to 1, get a feel for what actually using this lens is like, and 2, to see the resulting images and videos it produces. And let's talk about image quality. Sigma has always been known to make sharp lenses, and this one hits the mark. If you aren't familiar yet, this is part of a 3-lens set that's been released so far, or as others have referred to it as the Sigma trifecta. Between the Sigma 16mm f1.4, 30mm f1.4, and now the 56mm f1.4, these lenses all deliver exceptional image quality and sharpness. I actually made a review on the Sigma 16mm f1.4, so if you're interested in a 24mm full frame equivalent lens for $449, check out my review of that lens. But back to the Sigma 56, I brought this lens to a casual shoot with Annette, a portrait shoot for a friend with Andrew, and for a music video shoot for a client, and the resulting images and footages have blown me away. This thing is tack sharp. Looking at some sample photos we got with my friends Andrew and Caitlin, we can see that center sharpness is incredible. Coming from a primarily full-frame shooter, I was stunned to see that this APS-C setup, which is significantly cheaper than my full-frame setup, delivered just as good of quality when it came to portrait photos. And while we're here talking about sharpness, if we peek into the corners of these photos, I noticed that corner sharpness, even at f1.4, is good. Granted, most of your corners will often be out of focus since you're probably shooting portraits at f1.4, but it's good to know that the corners aren't smeared or ugly. Now, comparing two photos, one shot on the A7 III with the Sony 85 and one shot on the A6500 with the Sigma 56, to the unwary eye, they look pretty comparable. It's not until you focus on the background bokeh that you realize, the one with slightly more compression and blurrier background is the full frame camera, but still, highly respectable. On the topic of bokeh, the Sigma 56 has 9 rounded diaphragm blades, which means the bokeh balls are always very circular and pleasant, as opposed to 8-bladed diaphragms found in other lenses that can result in distracting octagonal bokeh. Something else to note, but unfortunately I don't have a screen recorder for my camera, the autofocus was very quick. And my definition of very quick is I never really thought about it. I never went, hold on, 1 second, I gotta focus real quick, or hold on, let's take that again, it went out of focus, let's do that one more time. Which is important to me when I have gear, because as you know, my main priority with gear is that it never gets in my way of creating. Next, let's talk about video quality. For the most part, everything I said in the image quality section is 100% transferable, but let's look at some of the footage with this lens while we're at it. Once again, I noted that the quality was sharp, colors were accurate and vibrant, and contrast was good. Looking back at some of the footage, I really loved how well the image quality held up despite extreme backlighting and lens flaring. This shot of Annette running is probably one of my favorite clips I've shot in the past few months. I have no idea why, it's just aesthetic. However, as you can tell, the lens is flaring a lot, which is something you may or may not want in your glass. While it handles backlighting well at most angles, in some angles, especially when you're pointing it right at the sun, the flaring is pretty intense. Also, it has this hard-edged lens flare quality. In this shot of Annette stretching her legs, you can see this very saturated, very hard-edged flare, which, while it can be stylistic and interesting, it can also be extremely annoying if the shot you have in mind didn't include a really out-there lens flare. Another thing I noticed while testing this lens is that it has this unique lens flare that appears when you angle your shot just right. Like a rainbow lens flare band appears, which can be kind of annoying again if it's not what you want in your shot. This seems to be a property I found in all of the Sigma trifecta lenses, most notably in the Sigma 16 because of how wide it is and how easy it is to get bright light sources like the sun in your shot. So that is something to know about these lenses. However, it's not the biggest problem in the world. Throw on a lens hood and just make sure that you're not shooting at those angles, and you should be able to avoid these problems. On the opposite end of too much light, one of the reasons why this lens might be appealing is its wide aperture. At f1.4, you can expect improved low light capabilities. This lens worked like a charm during casual video shooting while I was out with Annette, and it performed really well for the music video I shot for my client. At f1.4, you're letting in over twice the amount of light that you would be able to with an f2.8 lens. That means the difference between shooting at around 600 ISO as opposed to 1600 ISO, which on an APS-C body, that makes a big difference in low light image quality. For videos, you might also be wondering, how does the autofocus perform for shooting videos? While tests by other videographers have shown that it's not as fast as autofocus performance from native lenses, from my test, it's fast enough and works for most applications. We shot many clips where we were either panning to the subject or pushing in towards the subject, and the lens had no issue racking focus. So, what's my conclusion about this lens? On the list of pros, it's a compact portrait lens that's extremely sharp, it's weather sealed, durable, and it's comparable to some heavy hitters like the Sony E-Mount 1.4 that costs almost $1,800 but comes in at just only $479. But it's not without its flaws. It still uses fly-by-wire focusing, which is electronic manual focusing, and we're trying to consistently pull focus between takes or just trying to nail the focus on a single shot. You'll find yourself frustrated when you have to use manual focus. But it's just one of those things we kind of have to deal with when it comes to these lenses that are made for mirrorless cameras. Also, there's no optical steady shot, meaning if you're not shooting on a body with internal built-in stabilization like the a6500, then your footage is gonna look pretty shaky if you plan on handheld shooting, especially at this telephoto of a focal length. And the last thing, which honestly might not be a con for some people, but maybe it's too small. This lens combination with the a6500 felt a little awkward to shoot portraits with. Maybe it's because I'm used to the bigger bodies of the a7 III and more surface area of like the G Master lenses, but then again, I have small hands. Again, it's probably not a con for most people. It's compact. I'd imagine traveling with this thing is a joy, so take that as you may. So, my final thoughts. For $479, this lens is a spectacular buy. Sigma really did it again. The value proposition of this thing is honestly incredible, and if anyone asks me in the next few years probably, hey, I want a lens for portraits and I'm shooting on a Sony APS-C body, I think I just immediately link them this lens because I know it will produce some amazing images. Speaking of linking, if you're interested in checking out this lens, do check out the link in the description down below. So that wraps it up for this one. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video and thought it was helpful, do finesse that like button. If you want to see more content like this, subscribe and ring that notification bell to stay on top of when new videos are released. I would love to hear what you guys think about this lens, the images it produces, and whether or not it's a lens you're thinking about picking up down in the comment section below. Okay, so to start a new tradition on this channel, to end the videos, I'm going to pick a bunch of comments left by you guys and read them. What could go wrong? Actually, several of you guys really liked the how to shoot in manual mode video and left several comments saying nice things. One comment stood out to me from James Lovelace, who said, "This was great. Haven't heard much on this stuff since high school 50 years ago. Perfect for refreshing my brain and reminding me of what photography can be about." That is super nice of you, James. Knowing I'm bringing value to you guys is really why I love making these videos. On how to shoot good B-roll, part 1, there was plenty of comments, like this one from Maximilian 1000, which said, "Lol, a video about B-roll with almost no B-roll." You right. Honestly, I didn't even really like how that video came out, but for whatever reason, it ended up being one of my most popular videos, and that's probably like the comment I keep getting on it, so keep it up. And oh, from Plexi8, got B-roll? You goddamn right I do now.